LZ0 engines are failing left and right. There is no doubt about that. But we don't need to worry about it that much because it's only the 25 and 26 model years. And let me add a little caveat there. It is not all of them. So please don't get me wrong. It's not all the 25 and 26 LZ0 engines. I'm going to clear up a lot of this information. Now, I have a lot of questions and comments that have come through on the previous podcast, and we're going to go ahead and answer those questions on here about the thrust bearing failure. So if you're an owner of a 25 and 26, hopefully I can shed some light on the actual issue at hand and how it's going to affect you possibly. This is from my own opinion. Now, if you're new here, my name is Greg, and I am a GM technician at a local dealership, and I also run the DemonWorks YouTube channel, where there's a ton of information about the 3.0 Duramax diesel, which we call the 3MAX. So welcome to everyone new and everyone that's been here for a little while. We are on episode 3. I also did not mention that I do have the DuramaxNews.com website, where there is a lot of information on there about the 3.0 Duramax diesel. I will be working on the 3MAX website, which is 3maxdiesel.com. So be sure to watch out for that. That will be dedicated to a lot of information about the 3MAX. So that way everything is easy to find. It's going to have maintenance on there. We'll have bulletins popping up, and I'll share all the information that I can, what I'm working on. But this podcast is dedicated to the LZ0 thrust bearing failure. And like I said, I've got a couple questions on here that we're going to dive into in regards to the LZ0 thrust bearing failure. Now, for episode 4, I will be answering a lot more questions, so be sure to comment on this video if you're watching the video version of this podcast, and or if you're on Apple or Spotify, comment on there. I see everything, and I take notes on this stuff so that way I can answer your questions. This is a community-focused podcast, so feel free to ask any questions. If you've got opinions, whether you think they're real basic and nobody needs to ask them, feel free to ask them. We are here to answer any questions that you have. New owners, older owners, anybody in between. We are here as a community with the 3.0 Duramax diesel, otherwise known as the 3MAX. So let's get into what the issue is. Now, what we have going on is a thrust bearing failure on the 25 and 26 model year vehicles. I started a blog on DuramaxNews.com where I was asking people for, if they had a 25 or 26 and they experienced a failure, if they could share what build date their vehicle was. Now, a lot of people said that's all useless info because the build date from the engine is what matters. And yes, that does matter the most. However, asking people to crawl into an engine bay and try to find that serial number or the build date number on there, it's very difficult because it's at the front of the engine and it's buried. So I felt that we can pin this down a little bit better just off of using the build date on the side of the vehicle. And we know that these engines are all just going to be typically built in the same kind of time frame. So if we see certain months that stand out, then we know maybe I want to avoid those months of builds. But let me reiterate, this is not all 25, 26 trucks. So you could have a good one that was built in 25 or 26. And I'm going to get a lot of people that are going to comment on here, which is completely welcomed, on they have a 25 or 26 and they've had no issue at all. So again, feel free to comment about that. Let's talk about what's going on, and that is the thrust bearing is actually failing. Now, GM put out a bulletin that does not give us GM technicians any insight as to what exactly is failing with this, just that the thrust bearing is failing. Having seen several of these, and I know the thrust bearing comes out and it's typically in the engine oil pan where it does not belong. Now, if you don't know what a thrust bearing is, no big deal. It's basically a bearing that's in between the crankshaft and the block, prevents the crankshaft from moving forward and backwards. That's its job. So the crankshaft is rotating on the bearings and the thrust bearing actually stays put. Now, there is a surface finish on the crankshaft that rides against that thrust bearing, and it's protected by some engine oil. So What I believe is happening is there's actually friction that's being created between the crankshaft and the thrust bearing, which is wiping out that engine oil, which just means you have metal on metal, but starts to wear away very quickly. And I bring that up because I think that is actually what's going on here. I I'm thinking that the crankshaft itself has a little bit of a rough finish where it's supposed to be finished super smooth, and I'm thinking there is just a slight difference in that surface, and that's what's causing the bearings to actually wear on the thrust bearings. And once that crankshaft is moving enough back and forth, those bearings tend to fall out and they're inside the engine oil pan, and now the engine is toast because all that metal comes through the engine. There's no getting that out. It's wiped out. Now, the warranty does cover this engine replacement. There's really nothing that I believe an owner can do. It's just you either get a good one or you don't get a good one. But the good thing is that the new engines, I personally believe, are repaired. So they're not going to have the same issue because GM does know that there is an issue there, and they do know that they had to fix it. So it is my belief that it is fixed. Now, like I said, this doesn't happen to all of them. That's why I'm thinking that it's not specifically a manufacturing issue as far as like an error at the assembly line or anything like that, because we would see it in different batches, and we're not seeing it in batches. We're just it's scattered throughout, and it's not every single 25 or 26, like I said. So that is my opinion on what is going on. Now, let's go ahead and get into some questions that I've had sent over to me in regards to this. So that way we can kind of go through and maybe ease some minds. And then I'll finish it off with my opinion on the 25-26, because I've got an interesting take on some of this. And I think one of the questions are actually going to open that door. But I think you'll be very shocked at what I have to say about the 25-26. All right, let's get into the questions here. Is this thrust bearing failure something I can catch early, or does it just happen? So there are different forms of this question. Is there any warning? Would oil analysis show it? Would I hear something first? Can I check it myself? And all of these are great questions. And in my opinion, yes, you can check it yourself if you feel comfortable with doing it and you take care of all safety items that so that way you don't get hurt. So I did a video on the DemonWorks YouTube channel where I actually showed myself removing the inspection cover and using a screwdriver to pry on the torque converter to see if it will slide forward and backwards. Now, it doesn't take a lot of force, so don't go prying on anything super tight or super hard. And if there is movement, then yes, it kind of shows that there is a failure that is taking place. But if there is no movement, me personally, that doesn't mean that it's perfectly fine, but that just tells me that I'm not having the issue and I'm okay to drive it. So I would do this before I go on a long road trip for sure, because I don't want to be left stranded anywhere. Nobody wants to get left stranded. So like I said, this isn't all of the 25-26 trucks and SUVs. It's just some of them out there. So yes, it is something you can catch early. It typically takes 1,000 miles at least before we start to see these engines fail. And a 10,000 mile engine failure is rare, but it does happen. So keep that in mind, that it's typically between 1,000 and 5,000 miles is where we see these failures take place. Now, in regards to the oil analysis, yes, the oil analysis should show it. There should be a high level of metals in there. But if you are sending in a used oil analysis, you may see high levels of metals anyway, because during break-in, you're going to see that. So the oil analysis should show it, but it may show you just basic break-in. So that's the tough one. I would save my money and just wait a little while. I know Lake from the Oil Geek actually mentions don't do an oil analysis before 10,000 miles. So I think that's solid information. And if I made it to 10,000 miles, I'd feel comfortable sending in an oil analysis, let him take a look at that. He's at Speed Diagnostics. Highly recommend him. He's like the oil guru. 100%. All right. Question number 2. If I make it past 10,000 miles, am I basically in the clear? So I kind of answered this and I kind of didn't. So in my opinion, you kind of are in the clear, but it's not for sure. It's not definitive. What could set that off is, one, check it with the end play measurement and see if you have any end play movement. If there's no movement, I think, yeah, you are probably pretty good. You could also send off the oil analysis, and then that should tell you a little bit of a window. That being said, you don't want to just send off one oil analysis. It's all about watching trends. So if you send off an oil analysis at 10,000 miles and then wait till the next oil change at 15,000 miles or however you do it, then you'll be able to see, are your wear metals the same there? Are they going up higher? And that will give you that indicator. So yes, if you make it past the 10,000 mile mark, I think you are in the clear, but it's not 100% perfect. Would you still buy a 25 or 26 LZ0 knowing this? Some other questions related to this. Should I avoid the 25, 26? Am I screwed if I already bought one? Would you buy one today? Let me tell you, with the warranty, you're covered. So if this engine fails, it's going to be an inconvenience. I'm not discrediting that, but at least you'll get the updated engine to whereas I say updated, I don't think there's any updates. This was just some sort of issue, but they should know what the issue was that caused this. So the new engine, it should be trouble-free. Now, if you're in the market of buying one, I think you can use this as an advantage and maybe leverage this a little bit more when you're talking with the salesperson and bringing up, these 25s and 26s. They show that they have this issue. I mean, a lot of people know about this thrust bearing issue, and it may play into your favor and allow you to get a better deal on it. So keep that in mind. It's just one other reason to use to try to get a better deal on it. And honestly, I was considering a 26 LZ0. Even with this issue out there, the reason I'm not getting a 26 is because I do want the 27 truck. I do believe there's big changes coming in 27. At a minimum, it's the body is changing, and we don't know what engine is coming out in that. And hopefully it is another updated engine. That's always fun, but if it's the same LZ0, then it is what it is. The LZ0, I believe, is a good engine. So I would take that, but pay attention to the podcast in the future because we're going to talk about all of the new stuff upcoming. But going back to would I buy the 26? Yes, I think the rebates are sitting pretty good and discounts on these trucks are sitting pretty good. Right now, I think it's a buyer's market on these. And that's why I was tempted. I'm like, maybe I should just trade in the 24 ZR2, pick up a nice 26 LZ0, take advantage of all these price reductions. But we're not going to do that right now. So yes, I would feel totally comfortable buying one. I would be checking it and making sure that I don't have an issue. There would be some trust issues on long road trips, obviously, and I do a lot of road trips. If you're familiar with the DemonWorks channel, there's always a road trip going on, always towing. So with me being willing to take on that, I think that speaks highly of it. It's an unfortunate issue right now where, yes, the engines are failing. And I believe the turbos actually went on back order for a little while there. But we've got one LZ0 at the shop right now that needs the engine replacement. So it's going to get all of that. And that's going to be a video for the future in the Duramax, in the DemonWorks channel. I'm going to try to show more of that engine, and we'll break down and show what the failures are within that. So be sure to watch for that on the DemonWorks channel. So if you have more questions related to the 3.0 Duramax diesel, feel free to comment them in, and I will go through all of them. My prior episode 2, I think, had like 170 comments within 2 or 3 days. So you guys are killing it with the questions and comments, and I do see every single one of them. I'm taking note of them and seeing what people are generally asking. I want to help out the new owners as well as the owners that are very knowledgeable in the diesel world. So everybody's welcome. This is a community of the 3.0 Duramax diesel. So feel free to answer anybody else's questions if you want to, create discussions, but we'll work on this as a community and make this 3.0 Duramax diesel as good as it should be. And right now is a little hiccup with the LZ0, but prior years, the 23, 24, that was a pretty solid engine. Those upgrades were great. The DEF consumption was a concern, and we're going to talk about DEF consumption in a later podcast. But right now, I think I have my DEF consumption warnings all figured out with a recent GM programming that I did on my truck. So I need to tow again But if you are unaware of that, check out the video on the DemonWorks channel where I did the reprogramming, and then I rented a trailer and drove up and down Parley's Hill, which is a significant grade. And I did it, I think, 3 or 4 times and had no warnings on there. So I feel confident that that issue was resolved. Outside of that, this LZ0 engine is stout. The power increase from the LM2 was great. I think the steel pistons are going to allow the engine to last longer. Everything about it is just a little bit more robust. There was an update to the coolant control valve, and we all hoped that that was the end of the coolant control valve woes. Not the case. We actually have different issues with coolant control valve. So that's still something that needs to get fixed. And maybe in the future, they'll fix that with the 27 engine. Who knows? But right now, we are dealing with this LZ0 engine issue. I do believe that the new ones that are on the lot right now that got produced recently, I believe those are going to be perfectly fine and shouldn't have any of the issues at all with them. So hopefully that sheds some confidence in you guys as well. And yeah, comment so that way we can keep this going. We'll get episode 4 up there with more of your guys' questions, concerns, comments. Till next time, see ya.